Five, four, three, two, one. And I am back. Okay, so usually when I come on here and talk, it's off the cuff, kind of. Like I know what's going on, but I kind of just talk what is on my mind. But there's something that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago that I absolutely have to talk about. And that is the city of Toronto filed an injunction against Tiny Homes Toronto. So a carpenter, a black carpenter, which I kind of feel is important, started building little homes for the homeless in Toronto because right now, I'm recording this March 11th. It's very warm outside, it's spring weather. But back in February, like, it was very cold and people and the shelters were full, not to mention there's COVID. So people were literally out here freezing and dying. So this carpenter thought of a way to kind of help that because the city isn't doing anything. What can the city do? Well, of course, the city can do more, but they weren't. So he built like these tiny little pods that you can get up and go inside, and it fits one person. And at least this way they were warm and they weren't dying from the cold. And then, not too long after, the city started. They filed an injunction, and basically they're taking him to court to get these removed because they asked him. It was kind of like a cease and desist to remove it, but they didn't. But he didn't because if he takes it out or not, the people are still going to be dying. And so now they're going to have to take him to court. And I think it's very important because Mayor John Tory, I actually liked him. I still kind of do. I think I was too young when David Miller was mayor to really comprehend the things that what he was doing. And then Rob Ford, you know, as a mayor, I was still kind of young too. But then the most memorable thing about him was him smoking crack. So I don't want to really use him as an example. But a lot of people did say he really did do good things for Toronto here and there. But I can't really speak on that. Now, Mayor Tory, since he's been elected, the one that came after Rob Ford, he's done very good things. And I know he actually cares about Toronto because I see him. He's like every morning when there's a new like opening or cutting up ribbon or just announcement, he's there 6 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning ready. So I know like genuinely he cares about Toronto. But Mayor Tory is also an older white man who probably grew up in different circumstances from what's in Toronto now. Like not too long ago, because my grandparents came here in the 70s, there was a lot of racism and things that were blocking barriers for people of color to even get jobs or get hired. So even if Mayor Tory is progressive, that doesn't mean that he always acts, him or his party or his councilors always acts in the best interest of the city. Because let's be real here, the city that and things that make Toronto is its diversity. But the people, the gatekeepers, are, you know, older white people. And we're trying to change that, but as of yet, it hasn't changed. So, Toronto seeks injunction to stop man from putting tiny shelters for homeless in city parks. So, city seeks to city seeks order to permanently restrain Khalil Save right from placing structures on city land. So the city of Toronto is asking a court to order a local man to stop building small wooden shelters for the homeless. The city filed an injunction on February 12th against Khalil Sevwhite, a carpenter who has been building small structures for those living outside. The city wants an order that permanently stops Sevwhite from placing or relocating structures on city-owned land. It cites bylaws that prohibit camping and living in city-owned parks. Sevwhite did not immediately respond to the request for comment. He has been building shelters since fall and has raised more than 200,000 on GoFundMe for materials. Homeless encampments have popped up throughout the city and hundreds fled shelters last year, fearing contracting COVID-19. Stubby White insulated wooden tiny shelters are in numerous parks around the city. And he says, I'm making this post to let you all know that I have stopped building tiny shelters, but will continue to do maintenance and relocating shelters as people staying outside get into housing, Stubby White said on his GoMundMe page on February 11th. The city said in a statement that structures are not safe. It pointed to a wooden structure fire this week at a downtown encampment that claimed a life of a man and proof of dangers. It isn't clear who built the structure involved in the fire. The cause of the blaze remains under investigation. City spokesperson Brad Ross said that the injunction is needed. Structures are making it challenging and difficult to encourage people who are living outside to come inside where it is safer, where the issue of fire, for example, is removed, Ross said. Homeless advocate Lorraine Lamb, however, disagreed, saying the city's responsibility to provide options for unhoused people. We need to provide good options for people, and people who are given the rights and are given the options that they will take them. So the city needs to step up. Toronto Fire Service, for its part, said it's been working to raise the issue of fire safety in encampment residences. And encampment residents say they have nowhere to go. Those living in encampments said that they have nowhere to go with shelters at or near capacity and concerns of the novel coronavirus. A COVID-19 variant has made its way into one of the city's shelters, and there are currently outbreaks in 7 shelters. City has carried out a massive relocation effort to reduce the population at its shelters, which are mostly congregate settings, by moving individuals into hotels and apartments and permanent housing. Unhoused people have said that this is not a solution for everyone, as many of the hotels are far from the services they use, which are largely clustered downtown. The city said a hearing date for the injunction is yet to be set. So there's a lot there, but basically, the city, I guess the main issue for them is that, one, he's building these shelters on city land, and 2, there's like a fire safety issue. But I don't think the city is really doing its part as thinking and talking about what really matters. What really matters is there was homeless people out there dying and freezing, and not to mention there's a pandemic outside. So it's not like going into these shelters that are full or near capacity is going to help them, because in doing that, they could catch coronavirus or they might not get in. So what option do they have? And I don't think many of them are staying in these tents and camps by choice. They have no other way, especially during a pandemic where, we've seen an economic downturn. So, I think I saw on the news, CP24, like we lost like 5 point something % in our GDP. So could you imagine, for people who are already down and desolate, that were probably homeless before or became homeless because of the pandemic, and there's this freezing squall and they have nowhere to go, but they see this little encampment because, and it fits one person. So it's not like he has to room with other people. So there's fear of you getting coronavirus from someone else, but you just want to survive and make it through the night. So what are you going to pick? Sleep outside in the cold where you could possibly freeze to death, or go into this encampment? I think Khalil is trying to provide a solution. While I can see the city's point where it's a fire hazard or anything, or it's also on city land, but why don't you work with him? Why don't you work with him to get a space where he can build these things safely, get it inspected by the fire department, so these people have somewhere to go, and they don't have to worry about a shelter being at capacity or near capacity that they might not get in, and they have nowhere else to go. Like, why are you working against him? Like, he's doing something to solve your problem. And if you really cared about the citizens, you do something, because I think it's a lot easier for you to just find a space, like a parking lot or something, and let them build it, let it get inspected, and say, hey, this amount of people can live here, and go somewhere else. Because at least then people have somewhere to go, and then maybe they have wheels so they can move it or pack it up for the night, clothes. There's ways to do this. And I think attacking someone that is actually trying to help the city and help people that are downtrodden and homeless is definitely not the answer. So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't really agree with Mayor Tory on this, because you see, he's not helping, and he was saying we should use shelters, which is very interesting, because around the same time that, they were saying, oh, you should go use these shelters and everything, where there was an outbreak, kind of mentioned in the article, but a police college and at 7 different shelters. So the Ontario Police College, there was outbreak that reaches more than 100 COVID-19 cases. 100. So something that is city run and is supposed to be helping and protecting people by training these people had a massive outbreak. And it's over 100 cases. Well, that's just from a day ago. But when it released then, it was like 30 people, but then they didn't know the extent to what the outbreak reached, because these people are coming in and out of school and going to different places. So could you imagine? So a COVID-19 outbreak at the Ontario Police College has now sickened 102 people, according to public health officials. There are currently 33 active cases linked to the outbreak in the training facility at Amelin, Ontario. While the rest are considered resolved, the Southwestern Public Health said Tuesday. The outbreak at the college was first declared on February 24th, and all in-person classes were suspended the same day, said a spokesperson of the Ministry of Solicitor General. The college is working with public health to determine when it was feasible to return in class format. Classes are currently being held virtually. The provincial government describes the Ontario Public College as one of the largest police training facilities in North America. So they're saying, oh, go somewhere where it is safe. We know that you can go to one of our places, and bam. So, also, the city of Toronto says that 29 people living at a shelter have tested positive for an unidentified COVID-19 variant. The city says the public health declared an outbreak at the Maxwell Megan on February 3rd. It says Public Health Ontario sequences the samples to identify the COVID-19 variant. And the city says all residents who have tested positive for the disease have been sent to a recovery center. It says that there are currently 121 people staying at the shelter. There are 9 shelters with COVID-19 outbreaks, with 149 people testing positive for the disease. So they say go to a shelter that is near at capacity because it's safer. But here, there's a large outbreak at 9 of their shelters. So is tiny homes not a solution that maybe someone could get behind? I could get behind it because, at least it's better. I could find more comfort. And is it really that hard that when someone leaves, if the city was actually helping them, like there was a bottle of sanitizer and wipes that you could spray up and wipe down stations, so that, if someone else needs to go there for the night, or you go somewhere else, or you can, for whatever reason, get into the shelter, that it's safe and it's sanitized and someone else can get there if they can't get into a shelter or find anywhere else that's safe for them. And why I think this is a problem, because the city is going to be spending a lot of money fighting this injunction when, let's be real with it, they don't need to be. And of course, I brought it back because I remember last year, when, it's still here now, but there were calls to defund our police. Because let's be real, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, spending a lot of money. We got CERB, so the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, so people that were out of jobs were getting $2,000 a month. Then we got CRB, which is the Canada Response Recovery Benefit, which is like when CERB ended in like August or September, whatever. People who still were out of a job or weren't working really could still get, I don't think it was 1,000, but it was still a certain amount of money. So whilst, George Floyd and the horrible case of police brutality, let's not forget, there was a lady last year, I don't remember her name now, but basically she went to a party, only black girl, with a bunch of white people. And she might have been, she might not have been black, she might have been native, or black and native. But anyways, she was at this party, all white people, and then mysteriously she fell out of the story of like the like she jumped, and they when the SIU investigated, they said there was no suspicious behavior, but we all know that was bullshit. And so this isn't the first time. Then there was Devonte Miller, I'm pretty sure, the one where the police officer literally beat him so bad that he was blind in one eye. So police brutality and racism and structures against black people and other people of color are everywhere, especially in Toronto, where they trying to act like it's not there, like we're not as bad as the States. But you know what? Toronto is just as bad, or possibly worse, because at least in the States they're upfront about it. Over here in Canada, they're trying to hide it, but we know the truth. Because if you've ever been someone that has skin that is darker than white, they know what it's like. They see the eyes, and that's just not from white people alone. That's from other people, either within your culture itself, so light skins versus dark skins, or from other communities such as the Asian American or the South Asian American communities looking at each other. And I'm not just talking, and black people looking at other communities too. So there's this whole us against them mentality, but really it's not solving the problem. If anything, it's making it worse. So 8 months ago, Toronto was calling out city councilors who voted against defunding the police. And would you guess it? Who voted against um, cutting the budget? Who was in favor? Branford, Ceci, Fletcher, Layton, Matlow, Perks, Perusa, Wrong, Tam. And you know who was against cutting the police budget? Or, I don't know, the money could be used now for shelters and response benefits, because, things are not white in Toronto. Um, Ansley, Bilo, Carroll, Cole, Crawford, Fillion, Ford, Grimes, Holiday, Lai, McClevey, Minion Wong, Nunezada, Pasternak, Thompson, and Tory. So, surprise, surprise, our Premier, Ford, and the Mayor of Toronto voted against defunding the police. So, keeping an institution that at that time was very, you know, at the forefront of showing how inequity is still truly alive in Canada. And even like recently, the SIU is investigating how a police officer shot and killed a 1 year old. And what came out of it? What's coming out of it? Nothing. And now they're out here using our tax money and our dollars to go fight someone who's actually trying to solve a problem that they don't give a fuck about. So with all that being said, I just want to say, Mayor Tory, I like you generally, and I think you do care for the city, but I think you need to stop looking at, because even now Mayor Tory wants to still open up the waterfront, with condos, the waterfront area for affordable housing. It's just not going to happen. With all the money that Canada is spending, the city's going to go bankrupt. I think you need to restructure, and this pandemic isn't over. Even if by summer, which first of all, the vaccine thing, I don't know what the hell is going on with Toronto, but every day every time I turn on the news or something, there's just something about how we're promising we're going to get everyone vaccinated by a certain point. And for some reason, vaccines delayed. People aren't getting vaccinated. They need to. But the States, which is out literally the wild, wild west below the border, somehow had 50 million people vaccinated, which is like, I swear our population in Canada is like I think they've vaccinated more people now in America than there are people in Canada. And that says something from the States. But anyways, that's all I really had to say today. I do like Mayor Tory, but I have to admit that he's not doing a very good job, like Ontario in general. But I'm not going to say anything about Ford because I didn't vote for him. And I knew that getting someone like Trump, who wasn't really a politician, into politics would not bode well for our province. And really, if something like a pandemic, or, a pandemic happened, he would not have the right structures in place to actually help the people or his constituents. But that's all I have to say today. Um, Thank you for listening, and see you next time. Peace. Yes, and quick side note, I forgot to mention this because the reason why I brought up the defunding thing, not just about um, specifically when I was talking about Mayor Tory, was because um, January 12th, 2021, Mayor Tory asked for more funding from provincial and federal governments. So the Toronto's mayor is calling on federal and provincial governments to once again step up with financial support for Canadian cities as the COVID-19 pandemic stretches into a second fiscal year. So John Tory said Tuesday that if the higher levels of government don't come up with enough renewed funding, Toronto will have to cut up to $860 million of capital spending. I do not think it's an appropriate time to cut services to people, especially vulnerable people, and I certainly don't think it's time for a huge tax increase, said Tory. So we'd be left with no alternative. But I'm optimistic. I think other governments will come forward because they'll realize we need to continue to make those investments. We need to provide services to people. Tory made the remarks in a speech to the Empire Club of Canada that previewed some of the city's 2021 budget, which will be brought before the City Council on Thursday. Tory had advocated for a safe restart agreement for municipalities in the country in 2020, which federal and provincial governments agreed to last year. He said that the government agreed to bridge Toronto's $1.7 billion gap for 2020 to help fund the city's COVID-19 response and to respond shortfalls for its public transit. He argued that Toronto and all large cities in Canada need a second agreement in place as local economies continue to suffer during the pandemic. Given the length of time it took to reach the agreement on safe restart in Toronto in 2020, it's a great deal. It's time to deal with 2021 now, Tory said. The mayor reduced ridership to the TTC as an example of the city's income had been hurt. He said that ridership dropped 1.7 million people each day to 504,000 roughly, leading to a loss of 6.4 million in 2020. TTC will receive 7.89 million subsidy in this year's budget, but will also require 796.4 million to offset COVID-19 impacts. Other investments from Thursday's budgetary previewed including an additional 281 million for shelters, plus further 15 million for supportive housing. He also said that Toronto Public Health City renowned Long Care Homes and Toronto Community Center will get more funding. So yes, so it's like very interesting that he says that they need more money, but he refused to cut services like the police, where it's not like you take the money away from the police and then it's just, that we're disbanding the police. No, we're taking the funds from the police. It's a 10% income decrease, which was like millions of dollars. And then he could use this money to offset the things like the COVID-19 pandemic. And he says he cares and he would use it for shelters and affordable housing, but he refused to cut this budget. And in the end, it kind of screwed him, and now he's asking for more money. Which is why I'm like, you're not really what you say you are, or you're not really writing for what you really say you're writing for. Because if you really did care, you would have just you would have listened to the 10%. We didn't say defund 50% or defund the entire thing. We said a 10% cut, and that's millions of dollars that he really could use now. So yeah, that's just a side note I had to add. But yeah, I hope things get better. That's all I can do. All I can say. All right. Peace.